Well, good morning. We want to welcome all of you here uh, to the Capitol today. This Thursday, February 19th, is STEM Day at the State Capitol. Lieutenant Governor Kim Reynolds and I are pleased to be joined today by Dr. Jeff Weld, Executive Director of the Governor's STEM Advisory Council, to highlight the important work of science, technology, engineering, and math. STEM Day at the Capitol will take place in the Rotunda starting at 10 a.m. with 33 exhibits showcasing some of the great STEM work underway all across Iowa. Business and industry, public and private schools, higher education, nonprofits, and others will be among the exhibitors. Students must be well prepared in STEM subjects to succeed in today's knowledge-based economy. A first-rate STEM education helps students make smart decisions in their personal lives and gives them a strong foundation to pursue a STEM career. And of course, STEM jobs tend to pay a lot more than the average jobs. Giving students a world-class education must include a great STEM education. The STEM Council, which is co-chaired by Lieutenant Governor Kim Reynolds and Vermeer CEO Mary Andrenga, has been working hard to assure all students get an opportunity for a great STEM education. Lieutenant Governor Reynolds will talk more about that in just a minute. I'm proud of the STEM Council's progress, but we also have much more to do. Iowa students, for example, ranked 25th in the nation in 8th grade math in 2013 on those national tests, 16 points behind Massachusetts, which is the top performing state in the nation. Iowa led the nation in 8th grade math in the early 1990s. But Iowa scores have barely budged while other states have moved up. The challenge of poverty doesn't explain the gap. In both states, Massachusetts and Iowa in 2013, 38% of eighth graders were eligible for free and reduced lunch, according to the National Assessment website. We are confident that Iowa's new teacher leadership system, which is being phased in over the next 3 years, and the other reforms that we have passed, will help raise student achievement along with the STEM initiative. This is about assuring a bright economic future for our young people and the state's economy. As the recent Battelle report laid out, it is critical that we generate and attract the skilled workforce needed for Iowa businesses to grow. Now it's my pleasure to turn the podium over to Lieutenant Governor Kim Reynolds.
Well, good morning, and thank you, Governor Branstad. And as you know, I love talking about STEM. So since the governor established the STEM Advisory Council in July of 2011, really our 47 members have made it a #1 priority to provide more high-quality STEM education programs to students all across the state of Iowa. The council's new STEM Pocket Guideline, which I think there's somewhere there in the credenza, highlights the many ways that that's being done. You know, it really starts with our Scale Up initiative, getting those high quality programs in the hands of students. And these 10 outstanding STEM education programs, I am happy to say, are reaching over 117,000 students in the state of Iowa. They're reaching them in Iowa schools, after school clubs, and other settings this school year. It started at 40, then we went to 100, and we're up to over 117,000. The programs include initiatives like First Tech Challenge, a community focused robotics program. Engineering is elementary, KidWin, which is a wind power and renewable energy program. And I'm pleased that 4 additional programs have been added for the next school year, including Project Lead the Way, computer science, and software engineering. The council has invited pre-K educators and individuals who teach in informal settings such as 4-H, Girl Scouts, libraries, daycares, to apply for the 14 STEM Learning Scale Up programs. The application deadline is March 9th, and they can learn more about that at iowastem.gov. Scale Up programs, I'm happy to say, are in more than 90% of the 338 school districts across the state of Iowa, as well as many non-public schools and out-of-school settings. And our goal is to be in 100% of the school districts, and we hope to do that relatively soon. Another initiative highlighted in the Pocket Guide include 2 other initiatives, which are the Microsoft IT Academy and the World Externship for Teachers. The Academy has made it possible for more than 1,000 students to earn industry recognized certification, and the Real World Externship for Teachers helps them take the lessons that they learn in business and industry when they're teaching there over the summer and bring that back into their classroom. The council also recently started a program to make it possible for high school students to experience project-based learning at business and industry sites. The program is called the Iowa STEM Center for Advanced Professional Studies, or CAPS, which makes it much easier. The 5 Iowa STEM CAPS awards were given out this fall of 2014. Another initiative is STEM classrooms, and earlier this month I had the opportunity to visit Hoover High School in Des Moines. Hoover was one of 4 school districts to be awarded a grant to implement the STEM classroom. And it was just really inspiring to see how engaged the students were in the classroom learning, and really to talk to the educator, who was only a third-year educator and can completely flip from a lecture style to a facilitator style teaching. Generous funding from the Iowa legislature of $5.2 million, plus support from the private sector and local communities and the National Science Foundation, make these and other opportunities possible. And so does the vision of the commitment of the Governor's STEM Advisory Council, along with the leadership, who you're going to get to hear from one of those, Dr. Jeff Weld, our 6 dynamic regional hub managers, as well as the Advisory Council that help support them in the regions across the state of Iowa. And it's also possible because Iowans really do understand that great STEM education is not just for some students, but it's for all students, and it truly will make a difference in their lives going forward. So with that, I would like to turn the podium over to Dr. Weld to give you a few more words about STEM in Iowa.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. So Thursday is a big day for STEM in Iowa. We will transform the rotunda of the Capitol into exhibits and displays and hands-on experiences for legislators to convey to them the important work that's taking place across the state. In fact, transforming the rotunda is a bit emblematic of what I think STEM is doing to the state of Iowa, contributing to a transformation of how we look at education in our state in those ways the Lieutenant Governor mentioned. Many of those partners exhibiting with us on Thursday are here. I just want to acknowledge them because our secret to success in Iowa is these deep and broad partnerships. The Technology Association of Iowa, the Iowa Academy of Science, the Science Center of Iowa, the World Food Prize, the Blank Park Zoo, the Girl Scouts of Iowa, higher education partners you'll meet, public universities, community colleges, private colleges, of course, our beloved scale-ups, Pint-Sized Science and Project Lead the Way, I believe, are represented here today. None of this STEM transformation would be possible without these important partners, and I must mention our communications public relations partner, Strategic America, has done such a great job with the messaging. This is emblematic, as I mentioned, of what's taking place across the state of Iowa. STEM is uniting communities around a common cause. STEM education is driving a linkage, in my experience, a first-time linkage of business and education across communities of our state. We've been at this for 3.5 years. I think we're beginning to see some evidence of our effect. We have a wonderful uptick in the number of post-secondary community college and 4-year college majors in the STEM fields that we're seeing lately. We're seeing a wonderful evidence of public support and awareness of the STEM cause for our state. We're seeing an encouraging rise in the number of teachers earning math and science teaching endorsements. And most importantly, we're starting to see some improvement in the achievement levels and attitudes and interests of Iowa kids when it comes to STEM. So the horizon's very bright. We're just beginning to scratch the surface, but as the governor indicated, there's an enormous amount of work to do yet, but I can promise you we've got the right people on the bus, and you'll meet many of them Thursday. So I hope you'll join us on the rotunda, 10 a.m. Thursday for STEM at the Capitol. Thank you.
Dr. Weld, thank you. Now we open it to questions on this STEM initiative.
Can you tell us more about the increase in the student teachers getting endorsements for science education?
Yeah, I believe it may be on the insert. The math and science teaching endorsement, of course, offered by the Board of Educational Examiners, has shown a strong percentage increase. I can't quote it off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to get it to you. That leads us to believe that there's more interest among teachers and, of course, school administrators for teachers in these subjects. I've just got to add one side note. Last year, the Board of Educational Examiners approved a new STEM endorsement. So unlike your and my school experiences where we took math, we took science, kids of our futures here in Iowa, not too distant future, will be able to take STEM classes by teachers trained and prepared to teach interdisciplinary, active, community-based problem-solving approaches to learning.
I would also point out, as part of the education reform we passed, there is a stipend for high achievers in the top 25% of their class that go into teaching math and science. It's $20,000 paid over a 5-year period. We think that too will be helpful, another helpful incentive. Yes.
Governor, can you maintain this momentum on STEM with 1.25%? The Democrats are saying, hey.
Oh, that's, wait a minute. That is only a part of it. There's $50 million in the teacher leadership program. There is money in the early childhood reading. There's money in that stipend program I told for high achievers that go into STEM. And we have about the total increase in state aid, $100 million for the next fiscal year and $250 million for the year after that. Now that's in a budget that's $7 billion. $3 billion of that $7 billion presently goes to K through 12 public education. So I think it shows a significant commitment to education with a tight budget. We're making cuts in other areas. We've reduced the number of state employees by 1,500. We're going to manage care for Medicaid and other things in order to be able to do this. What I don't want to do is make false promises like the legislature and the governor did in the past, and then come in and do a massive across-the-board cut. I think between the year 2002 and 2010, there were six times when they didn't fully fund the commitments they'd made, and the most massive was 2009 when Governor Culver cut 10% across the board. Those days are over. We're going to fulfill our commitment. I recommended on the second day of the session, this funding, supplemental state aid, not property tax as in the past, and that it would be provided for the next 2 years of the fiscal year. We have a biennial budget, 5-year projections, and it is sustainable over this entire period.
I was going to add one thing to that also. Well, I talked about the generous appropriation and the bipartisan support that the STEM initiative has received, $5.2 million annually over the last 3 years, 4.8 the first year. But what that has allowed us to do is to take the public appropriation and leverage that for private donations that we've almost been able to match. In addition to that, the scale up programs have a piece that they contribute, as well as what we sponsor with the $5.2 million appropriation. And Strategic America, every component, there's a in-kind piece that they're providing to make sure that we can sustain the STEM advisory initiative across the state of Iowa. So the appropriation has been a great leverage for us to bring in private dollars to really scale and accomplish what we're seeing happening across the state of Iowa.
Other questions?
Well, sorry,
Yeah, go ahead.
ask other questions.
On this subject first, but
Oh, go ahead.
it's not no more questions on this subject. We will open it to questions on other subjects as well. Jeff, thank you. Okay.
Just wanted to get your sense on whether you're supporting the measures in terms of the gas tax in the House and the Senate.
We have been working with the legislative leadership from the very beginning of the session. I think we've had 5 meetings around this table with legislative leaders. And as you know, bills have now been introduced in both the transportation committees and the House and the Senate. We're going to continue to work with the legislators of both parties. Our goal is to get something that has broad-based bipartisan support among both Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate. I'm very optimistic we're going to see action on this, and we're visiting also with individual legislators because the Battelle study says that quality infrastructure is critically important to our economic development success. That includes roads and bridges, but it also includes things like our Connect Every Acre broadband initiative.
So if the House and the Senate both, vote in favor of the bill that they are, would you sign them?
Yes.
You would approve you will sign a 10% increase in gas.
Well, I said from the very beginning that we're going to work in conjunction with the House and the Senate. And we also respect the fact that bills can undergo changes and amendments through the process. So what I'm saying is I do support providing additional funding for the road use tax fund. And we've been working in conjunction with the House and Senate to get this done. I'm optimistic that can be done. I'm not going to predict what the exact language of the bill would be, because I do expect there will probably be some amending through this process.
But you will, if they approve a flat 10 cent.
I never make a final decision on bills until I receive them. I intend to work in good faith, and I've had great communications with House and Senate leaders and indicated that we will work with them in good faith, and we're optimistic to get approval, and hopefully in the near future, not at the end of the session, but in the next month or so.
So you aren't sure then that if they pass a 10 cent gas tax increase, you might not sign it?
Well, no, don't put words in my mouth. Just say that I've been working in good faith with them. I made it clear that I'm interested in seeing something approved that will provide the needed funding we need for the transportation infrastructure of the state. There are many different options that were put together, and we've said we will look at and encourage legislators to consider all of those options, and then hopefully get something that we can get bipartisan agreement on.
Do you have an opinion about how important it is to get this done in the next few weeks rather than later in the session?
Well, I think it's important because there is a history of leaving tough decisions to the end of the legislative session. But this is something we think should be, and this has been around a long time. And we started working on this at the very beginning of the session. And as we went around the table at the very first meeting with leadership, there was a bipartisan agreement among the leaders and our office that this is something that should be done relatively early this session and not left to the end. So I'm optimistic that can happen.
Is there some danger in waiting? Like it's gonna get harder to do?
No, well, you know what happens at the end of a legislative session. A lot of things, it can get kind of crazy at the end of the session, and we don't want that to happen. We want this to be done in a very thoughtful, deliberative way with great input and obviously with bipartisan support.
For speaking of things that have gone
Yeah.
a long time here, are they getting any closer to some kind of agreement on the Wildwood Road? What do we call it?
No, it's supplemental state aid. Don't use that outdated term, because that includes property tax. This, we're looking at, and remember, we recommended 2 years, supplemental state aid for 2 years. I did that on the second day of the session. The House has passed our bill. The Senate, I guess, is going in a different direction. But my concern with the Senate is they're looking at spending way more than the state budget can afford. Revenue right now is running $100 million below the December revenue estimate. And so they need to justify where they're going to cut if they're going to spend over the budget, because it would jeopardize our ability to meet our commitments over this 5-year period.
When can administrators expect a deal on this as they try to put their budgets together?
As soon as the legislature, I made my recommendation. I stand by it. I hope the legislature and the House has approved it. So if the Senate wants to approve it, we'll have it. I want to see 2 years approved and get this resolved. The sooner the better. But this is not unlike some of the problems of the past. And I don't want to fall back into the problems of the past when the legislature made commitments they couldn't fulfill or sustain. And then we saw schools promised one thing and then a different level of funding resulting.
Governor, whenever we've talked about the problems at Fort Madison Prison, you've always brought up the fact that this prison originated in the Culver administration. Do you attribute?
That's a fact.
Do you attribute 100% of the blame of this to?
I'm not a
Culver
blame.
Administration. Well, yes, your folks, you
No,
have. You pointed
no,
it out every time.
Well,
Who's
the facts,
who's
wait,
responsible for this? That's what I'm saying.
okay, well,
Who-
that's
who
what
is
we're
under
working with.
responsibility for this?
We're working with the Attorney General's office to try to get to the bottom of who's responsible for the inappropriate design. To go back just factually, give you the history of this. This was recommended under the Culver administration. They said the cost would be $132 million. What they didn't do is also include all the costs of furnishing and opening the prison. And so the actual cost was about $166 million. And that additional money has been approved by the legislature. However, after it was built and we were getting ready to open it, they discovered that the geothermal system did not work appropriately. And then they further discovered there was a problem if you had smoke in it in getting that evacuated appropriately. So the reason why prisoners have not been moved in is because those design flaws need to be corrected first. And the Department of Corrections has been working with the Attorney General's office to determine who was responsible for this inappropriate design, and then to hopefully recover on behalf of the taxpayers from the people who were responsible for that.
Is there a timetable as to when we might know who it's blamed?
The Attorney General's office is working on that. I think the Attorney General's office is the appropriate place to ask for that. They're doing a very thorough investigation of this. They're working closely with the Department of Corrections. Yes, ma'am?
I heard that you invited the vice president to the Ag Summit.
I did.
Curious if you're going to reach out to any other Democrats, for example, Hillary Clinton.
Yes, we want, and I've talked to Bruce Rassetter, who is sponsoring this, and he's inviting all potential candidates of both parties to come. I think he's got 10 Republicans that have already committed. I had a very good discussion with the vice president. He said he would give it serious consideration. But I know that he wants Hillary Clinton and any other potential Democrats. I think there's 2 or 3 others that are considering it. I think it would be good to have them all come. And this is not a debate. It's just an opportunity for the candidates to share their views on issues that are important to agriculture. Iowa is a leading agricultural state. We are concerned that the price of corn is now below the cost of production due to the EPA's action on the renewable fuel standard. And there are many other issues. For instance, exports. This is important to us. The high value of the dollar has an impact there, and some of the trade restrictions. Actually, the president is recommending trying to open up more trade opportunities in both Asia and Europe. We're very supportive of that. And so there's an opportunity, I think, for all of the candidates, potential candidates, to come and share their views and their vision of how we can have a growing and prosperous agricultural economy in the United States.
Are any of these potential Republican candidates catching your eye, thinking about lending your support for this?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, I want to be a good host, and that's why I went to meet the vice president. I was very honored that not only I got the opportunity to meet him at the plane, that he invited me to come on the plane, Air Force too, and we had a very fruitful discussion. He also took me up and introduced me to the pilots and the crew. I thought that was very nice. And, you know, I want to be a good host for all the candidates. And I've been very open and willing to give my advice. Come to Iowa early, often, go to all 99 counties, meet with people, share your views and your vision for the future. And let's let the people of Iowa play an important role in the precinct caucuses in launching the presidential nomination process.
Yeah, would you support raising the speed limit on some stretches of rural interstate 75 miles an hour?
Well, I want to look at the impact that would have on public safety and fatalities on our roads. You know, I know a number of Western states have done that, but I would want to get more information before making a decision on that.
Governor, there's going to be some groups in the day talking about the medical cannabis law and talking about how difficult it is to obtain that oil. Do you have any interest in seeing that program expanded to make it easier for folks to get bigger?
Well, as you know, last year we passed, as did Illinois and Wisconsin and Utah and Alabama and a number of states, limited legislation to permit this medical cannabis to be available. I understand there's transportation issues, and Illinois' law is a little different than ours. There might be a possibility that we could work something out with the neighboring state in dealing with this. But I want to be careful that we avoid unintended consequences. We don't want, we want this to be available for the children with epilepsy, that it could help, but we also don't want to get in the hands of other people that are not authorized to have it.
There are some who want to manufacture, process it here so that you don't have to travel for it.
Well, if you've followed what Governor Hickenlooper has said in Colorado, there's a lot of unintended consequences. He wished it hadn't happened in his state. And when you get into the manufacture and distribution, which they're now doing in that state, there's a lot of other issues that they weren't really prepared for. He said he doesn't really like being the first state to do that. I think we've got to be very careful about that. And so there are a lot of problems that need to be carefully reviewed. And obviously, there's concern on the part of the medical community and law enforcement with what we do. And we want to be empathetic to the families and we want to try to help them, but we also want to do it in a way that doesn't create a bunch of unexpected problems like we see in Colorado and other places.
Maybe like work something out in the neighboring state, what might that be?
Well, Illinois has passed a law that's different than ours. And as I understand it, it did provide for the opportunity to produce the product. However, Governor Quinn did not make the designation that he was supposed to before he left office. So this was dropped on Governor Rauner's desk. I'm not sure what decision he's made. It's in reading the Quad City Times, I have learned that there is a firm in the Quad Cities that is intending to bid on this. So I guess we have to see what happens there. Obviously, the Quad Cities right across the river from Iowa. So I thought if Governor Rauner approves this and they go forward with this, maybe that's a possibility of something we could do. But that's all speculation. And again, as I said, this is an area that I think we need to be very thoughtful and very careful about. We want to do what we can to try to help the families, but we don't want to create a lot of unintended consequences like what they're facing in Colorado.
Do you see something happening this legislative session?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's possible, but I don't know. And again, like I said, there's a possibility of maybe working with a neighboring state on this as well.
And there's a couple bills in the Senate to soften penalties for marijuana possession. And they're running some numbers that show that would have a significant effect on the issue of African Americans disproportionately imprisoned on marijuana charges. Do you have an opinion about those bills?
You know, as I have always said, I will reserve judgment till I see any legislation in its final form. So, and we have been working with the African American community to address the concern about the disproportionate number of African Americans that are in the correction system. I think our parole board has made great progress also in reducing the disparity, and we have been able to increase paroles, at the same time reduce recidivism. So I'm really encouraged about the collaboration between the parole board and corrections in addressing this issue. And I've been working with Representative Helen Miller and with the Supreme Court, and we are intending to, have a conference to address this issue as well in the coming year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.